We love to sort of give you a snapshot of what's happening in Teesside County, Durham and North Yorkshire, and talk about things that maybe not everyone else is talking about because maybe they just overlook it. We don't. We don't overlook anything at BBC Radio T. So if it's important to you, it's important to us. And I know for a fact that if you hear it, there'll be somebody you know and you'll go, yeah, I know about that. Or I know about that. And it creates that sort of chain reaction. Now, have you heard of a condition called Erbs Palsy? Now, it affects about 1 in 1,000 babies. Now, Ellie is from Stockton, and she lives with it, and wanted to educate people about what it means to live with Erbs Palsy. She's been chatting to our very own Charlie Brammer.
It's a condition which affects the nerves in your neck and shoulder. So when you're born, your shoulder gets stuck. It's called shoulder dystocia, and it's an avoidable birth injury where midwives perhaps panic and pull on you too hard and then hence damage the nerves, resulting in different severity of disability in your arm, like nerve damage.
If you're living with Erbs palsy, how does that come into play in your everyday life?
So I have limited movement in my arm and reduced sensation, reduced strength. For an example, I can't lift it up fully, I can't rotate it certain ways. I'm quite lucky because it's not in my dominant arm, so I'm actually right-handed and it's in my left hand. But people out there are born where it affects the dominant arm, which makes it really tough to live with. When you're born, it can be a case of like you can't actually move the affected arm at all, so you tend to need surgery if that's the case, which I was one of them who needed an operation when I was 3 years old. Some people need multiple operations through their life in order to be able to use their arm to an acceptable degree. For their entire life they can't use their arm at all. Some people need it amputating because they find that the pain that they go through just isn't worth having, so they think, you know what, I'd be better off without this at all. Whereas some people, like, they sustain the injury and they might not be too bad, like they regain function of their arm as they get older and they grow up. Whereas for me, I feel that as I'm getting older, it was actually starting to get a bit worse with age. The more that I started living independently, I need to do more things for myself, and then it results in it seizing up, getting more pains. For me, there's nothing more they can actually do for it now. It's just the case of looking after it with physiotherapy, going to the gym. That can strengthen it up a bit. There's not really much more I can do with it.
How does that affect you, feeling like you have to explain yourself all the time?
It can be quite frustrating because a lot of people, when I finally get around to telling them that I've got this, they'll be like, I had no idea, you can't tell at all. But to me it's so obvious because I can look in a mirror and I can see the visible differences where my shoulder slopes more, my arm sticks out at the side, things like that.
Does that make you self-conscious?
Yeah, I always feel like I look silly, that it's so noticeable. But then I guess in a way it's good that people don't notice it. It can result in people being quite nasty to you because I could be somewhere where I'm struggling to carry a tray and people might be thinking, oh my god, that's not difficult, why is she struggling with that? Or getting on a train and having to put my suitcase up above on the shelves, I can't do that. I have to ask people for help, and then they'll be thinking oh, she's weak. Once people become aware of me having it, it's nice when people offer to do things for you. So at work I manage quite well, but there'll be things where I can't lift heavy items and do anything too strenuous with my arms, so it's always nice when people sort of offer to help you rather than me having to ask for it. You're not expected to know that I've got something wrong with me. In a way it's good that you're not just sort of looking at every detail of me to try and find a fault. You're not a bad person for not understanding someone else's disability. This is why you sort of come here and talk about this sort of thing, because you're trying to educate people on it. Only, I think, 1 in roughly 1,000 births this condition will occur, so it's not really a common thing that people are going to come across in their life.
What was your experience like growing up with Erbs palsy?
In primary school, I did actually experience quite a bit of bullying actually, and that carried on through secondary school as well. It was just because in PE I'd run with my arms sticking out funny and people would be like, oh, look at Ellie with her arm out, and yeah, you'd just get a lot of comments growing up just And I guess it's because people just didn't understand what it was.
Did that make you feel like you had to cover up?
Yeah, so I'd always wear clothes that'd hide it. I'd wear like a baggy blazer to cover my arm. Like, I'd just avoid doing anything that would draw attention to myself, because I was scared of how people, when they were younger, would like react to it. They'd just find it funny. I found that growing up, like, once people mature, they're more like open-minded to disabilities, and when people are younger, they just want to see the funny side in everything and like just find a way to exclude you for being different. So I think it's important that parents try and like educate the children to be more accepting of disabilities, because it's just not nice growing up experiencing that, because I do wish that that part of my life just wasn't a thing. But you know what, it does make you grow up to become much more like resilient to people's negative comments that you probably will still experience in life. If people want to be nasty, then that's them, that's nothing on you.
Have you met other people with your condition?
I've only ever met 3 people that I can think of in life. Some man that I met online, he told me that his daughter had it, and she was about 5-year-old at the time, I believe. As parents, they were worried, thinking, well, how is she going to grow up to be? Like, they just, obviously, it's the first child, they just didn't know much about the condition, obviously. So I met them and actually spoke to them to, like, reassure them that she will be okay growing up. It felt quite rewarding in a way, because I've never had to do that before, and it felt good to know that I am actually doing okay in life. I've got my own house now, I've got a full-time job, like, and I'm coping. My parents at the time probably thought, oh, how's she going to be when she gets older? Will she manage? Is she going to need like constant support? I didn't know how I was going to be. I was thinking, well, am I going to be able to dress myself when I'm older? Because at the time I couldn't. My mum always had to do it for me. I just didn't really have anyone to look up to with the condition that I could see and be like, okay, they're doing okay, I'm going to be okay. It sort of resulted in me like putting myself down all the time, because I thought, well, how am I going to cope?
But now you get to be that person.
Yeah, it is nice to be able to have the voice to be like, look, you're going to manage, you'll be okay, and if you're not okay, here's like things that you can do to try and help. And
what would those things be?
In the past year, I've just started going to the gym. Like, I've got myself a personal trainer now, and they've been supporting me with strengthening my arm up. So I told him about my condition. He did his research and has been like helping me get more use out of it to stop it seizing up and making it worse as I get older. I've been just trying to use it consistently.
And what did that mean to you, to have a trainer who would be so committed to go and do his own research and not expect you to educate him?
No, it was like really, really nice, because I've never had that before up until this point, where someone's sat down and said, right, we're going to make you be the best version of yourself effectively. And like, honestly, the progress that I've made through that is just amazing. Like, I would never have thought that was possible. You sort of feel inspired. It stops you feeling like, oh, I'm useless, I'm never going to be able to do that. You do just start to believe in yourself more.
You know, if there are any parents listening, like the parents that you had to meet who have a child that has Erbs palsy, what would your words of advice be to them?
There's going to be bad days and there'll be good days as well, and it's just a case of like convincing them that if they want something enough, they will be able to make it possible. There will be things that you can't do, but you will get through it, and nothing is impossible, really. Like,
again, that's one of these things where somebody, Daniel John Williams, who said, Gary, do you know of an illness called Erbs Palsy? He said, my daughter has it, and it's the awareness week. We need to talk about it because there's so many children around that have it, and put us in touch with Ellie. And a real frank, honest conversation, Ellie, there having with Charlie about the condition. And that's what we're here for. If we can help get the word out about what you go through, you may inspire others. There may be other families that are thinking, I'm not the only one. If we can help you, this is your BBC Radio Tees.